praise your name, most high and awesome God, and lift my hands unto you. You save my soul, on a rugged tree. Now I praise you, and serve you, Lord, throughout eternity.
Have you ever been on a long and dangerous journey? I can't really say that I have myself. It's the kind of thing I'm thinking about, like I'm reading to my kids right now, The Lord of the Rings, which is a difficult book to read out loud to somebody else. But we are in book 2. You know, The Lord of the Rings is like, it's 3 volumes, but it's 6 books. It's really just one big story. We're in book 2. We have just read about the Council of Elrond, and now the ring bearer Frodo and his 8 companions. They're about to set out from Rivendell on their quest, and that's a long and dangerous journey. They're going to face many fears on that journey, even to get to Rivendell with the ring. Frodo and his companions have, of course, faced many dangers, such as the Black Riders and all kinds of other things. That's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. Of course, I don't think you have ever faced the Black Riders or have ever needed to get a ring to Mordor. But have you ever been on a long and dangerous journey? A road filled with perils? I can't say that I have. I mean, actually, as I have thought about my own experiences, no, I tend to avoid long and dangerous journeys or roads that are filled with perils. I don't want to talk to you about the nervousness that I have experienced literally driving, or not myself driving, riding in vehicles in other countries that have different road rules than I am accustomed to. Because that's not really so much about danger, being in danger. It's more about just not being accustomed to the way people drive in other cultures where they don't have easily marked lanes or police officers ready to pull you over for speeding, and they use their horns in different ways than we use. They're not so angry, or at least what I've experienced in other cultures. They use their horn a lot more frequently, and it's not because they're angry at you, it's because they're warning you, I'm coming, I want to pass this way or whatever. I've been nervous in those experiences, but it's not a long and dangerous journey. The closest I can really come is in America, going several hours without a restroom or a gas station in sight. Not exactly what Frodo was experiencing. Maybe you have experienced a long and dangerous journey. Isaiah 35 is the topic. And it seems to be that the people of God are experiencing what could be a long and dangerous journey. But God promises that even though it might be long, it's not going to be as dangerous as they might imagine. Isaiah 35, it says, "The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom. Like the crocus, it shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given to it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God." It continues on, verse 5, "Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped. The lame shall leap like a deer, the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. For waters shall break forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert." Apparently, the people of God are going to be walking through the wilderness, through the desert. We get an explicit mention in verse 8 of a highway that they are going to be walking on. It'll be called the Holy Way. And as the people of God walk through the wilderness, walk through the desert, you would think that would be bad news. I have seen that in movies. Maybe you have too. Maybe you've even experienced it yourself. Some long and dangerous road through the desert where you can't find water, where your prospects for survival seem very dicey. But God says, it's not going to be that way for you. You're going to be walking through the desert, yes, but I'm going to make that desert bloom. The waters, this is verse 6 that I just read, the second half of it, the waters shall break forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. You're not going to be looking for an oasis. The whole thing is going to be an oasis. I am going to make your journey much more pleasant for you than you could imagine. Isaiah 35 is a continuation of a vision that started in Isaiah 34, where God promises once again destruction upon those who are opposed to him, destruction toward the wicked. And he specifically mentions Edom in chapter 34, verse 5, for instance. I imagine, again, that Edom, like Moab we have seen before, I imagine Edom here, specifically Edom, yes, as an enemy of God's people, but also as a sort of a symbol for everyone opposed to God's people, that God is not so angry specifically about Edom, although maybe, yes, about Edom, but about everyone that is opposed to his people. Whereas those other nations, the enemies of God, have triumphed in the past, God is going to bring victory to his people over their enemies. He promises victory to his people. He promises prosperity to his people. These are things they have not experienced, but they will experience. So this vision in chapter 34 and 35 imagines a time in the future when God brings the people back to Zion. Notice what it says in chapter 35, verses 8 through 10. A highway shall be there. Remember, it's in the wilderness. That's what we've been talking about. We're going to be walking through the desert. A highway shall be there, and it shall be called the Holy Way. The unclean shall not travel on it, but it shall be for God's people. No traveler, not even fools, shall go astray. No lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast come up on it. They shall not be found there. But the redeemed shall walk there, and the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. What is being imagined is the return of God's people to Zion. Apparently they have been taken away from Zion. This sounds like some things we will see later in chapters 40 and following, where the subject is the return from exile. In fact, some of the same language is used, or at least some of the same imagery, let's say, is used about, I'm thinking specifically about like water in the desert. For instance, chapter 41 of Isaiah in verse 17, when the poor and needy seek water and there is none, and their tongue is parched with thirst, I, the Lord, will answer them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. I will open, this is verse 18 of chapter 41, I will open rivers on the bare heights and fountains in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water, and the dry land springs of water. Or chapter 43, verse 19, I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Chapter 44, verse 3, I will pour out water on the thirsty land and streams on the dry ground. And it turns out in these chapters, the reason that God is going to make the desert bloom and have water in the desert is because the people of Israel are going to be walking through the desert out of Babylon. That's what we read in chapter 48, verse 20. Go out from Babylon, flee from Chaldea. Declare this with a shout of joy. Proclaim it, send it forth to the end of the earth. Say, the Lord has redeemed his servant Jacob. They did not thirst when he led them through the deserts. He made water flow for them from the rock. He split open the rock and the water gushed out. So here in these chapters, 40 to 48, the people are told to leave Babylon. They have been put into exile and they're going to leave Babylon. They're going to walk through the desert to get back to Judah. But that long road is not going to be dangerous because God is going to take care of them and they are going to have plenty of water even in the desert. That sounds like some of the themes we see in chapter 35 as well. Water in the desert, the highway that will be a holy way because the redeemed of God are going to be walking on it. They're going to be prospering even in the desert. They'll be able to return to Zion, and they will return to Zion with singing because their God has watched over them. Their God has brought about the reversal where the enemies of God are put down and the people devoted to God are brought up and they prosper. This is a highway, God says in verse 8 of chapter 35, on which the unclean shall not travel. We could reflect on that word unclean. The New Testament often calls on the people of God to be pure. I think particularly of chapter 4 of 1 Thessalonians, many other places, but that's the one that's in my mind, 1 Thessalonians 4, that this is the will of God for you, your sanctification, that you put off impurity, that you put off uncleanness. And on this highway, on which the people of God are going to be walking and prospering and singing on their way to Zion, the unclean are not going to be there. It's the pure. It's those dedicated to God. It is the sanctified, not the perfect, but those who have dedicated themselves to God, who have put off impurity. They are the ones that are going to be on their way rejoicing to Zion. And so the question that this chapter presents to us is, are we among those who are pure, who have dedicated ourselves to the ways of God? Do we want to march to Zion singing?
I praise your name, I praise your name, most high and awesome God, most high and awesome God, and lift my hands unto you. You save my soul, you save my soul, on a rugged tree. Now I praise you, and serve you, Lord, throughout eternity.